Good morning, fellow readers and booktubers. I've begun to notice a booktube tag called Poetry Thursday, and not only notice it, but I've come to appreciate it. And the people who maintain this with some persistency, some consistency. Occasionally, a Thursday might be missed, but generally speaking, It's the idea here is on Thursdays to read a favorite poem or perhaps a group of poems by one's favorite poet. And or sometimes you can read more than just a couple of poems, or maybe just one poem. I guess it kind of depends on the length of the poem, although there are no hard and fast rules how to approach this. You could read a group of poems by different poets. You could read poems with a common theme that are written by a bunch of different poets. What's really happening here on Poetry Thursday, I think the central idea here is an attempt to breathe life back into poetry, to freshen these poems, to freshen them up, to bring them out into the sun and let them breathe again. What you're doing when you read poetry aloud, you're sculpting the air, but with somebody else's words. It's quite an astounding thing. To read poetry aloud is to engage in an act of resurrection, no matter how short-lived the results might be. So today I'm going to, for the first time, enter this rarefied air of Poetry Thursday, and I'd like to read two poems by one of my favorite authors, a very famous Welsh poet. That's your clue, Dylan Thomas. And I'm going to read the two obvious poems, or at least the two poems that that are arguably his most famous or best known. And the first of those is "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." This poem was first written in 1947. It first appeared in print in 1951. And then the other poem, "The Force That Through the Green Fuse Drives the Flower," that one was written much, much earlier, possibly as early as 1933, first published in 1934, when Dylan Thomas was only 19 years old. Already, the muse had a solid grip on his thinking, and his insights and his choice of words and the profound feelings in that poem and really most of his poems is just something to behold. Now, one of the marks of a true classic, a classical piece of poetry, or a true classic in nonfiction or fiction, a true classic in music or art, is that it's something that you go back to again and again and throughout your life. And every time you return to it, something new emerges, or it will resonate with you in a different way. And I think this is especially true of poetry. And it's especially true of Dylan Thomas's poem, "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." I've read this poem many, many times throughout my life. I'm at a point in my life where this poem is hitting hard. It's really cutting deep into the very being, my very being. It really touches my soul in some ways. And I don't mean that to sound in a way that's causing me distress, but it is causing me a strange kind of comfort. And yes, comfort. I was going to say resignation, but no, not that at all. In fact, just the opposite of that. So let me begin with that poem. And I would guess most of you have heard this poem, or at least parts of it. Again, it's very, very famous. "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night" by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at the close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes, could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now, and with your fierce tears I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The next poem, or the other poem I want to read by Dylan Thomas, is an equally famous work, although written much earlier, The Force That Through the Green Fuse Drives the Flower. An amazing poem, very much like the one I just read, in that it is ultimately a contemplation of death and life and death. And, really, what is poetry but a matter of life and death? So this is Dylan Thomas's The Force That Through the Green Fuse Drives the Flower. The force that through the green fuse drives the flower drives my green age, that blasts the roots of trees as my destroyer, and I am dumb to tell the crooked rose my youth is bent by the same wintry fever. The force that drives the water through the rocks drives my red blood, that dries the mouthing streams turns mine to wax, and I am dumb to mouth unto my veins how at the mountain spring the same mouth sucks. The hand that whirls the water in the pool stirs the quicksand, the ropes, the billowing wind hauls my shroud sail, and I am dumb to tell the hanging man of how my clay is made the hangman's lime. The lips of time leach to the fountainhead. Love drips and gathers, but the fallen blood shall calm her sores, and I am dumb to tell a weather's wind how time has tricked a heaven round the stars. And I am dumb to tell the lover's tomb how at my sheet goes the same crooked worm. And that's all for today.